Have you ever met someone who made you feel like you were meeting yourself, but darker? Not the version you post online, not the one you bring to first dates, but the one you try to forget when the lights go off. They don't just make your heart race, they awaken something ancient, primal, beautiful, and slightly terrifying. There's a reason why your hands shake when they text, why you can't explain the pull, why it feels like fate, and yet like danger. Because maybe it's not them you're drawn to. Maybe it's the part of you that they carry, the part you abandoned long ago, the one you locked in a room and called it growth, the one that whispers in dreams and screams in silence. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the hidden self, made of all the things we deny, suppress, or fear. And sometimes, someone walks into your life who doesn't fall in love with your light. They fall in love with your shadow, and because they reflect it so clearly, you fall in love with them. But here's the twist. They are not your missing piece. They are your mirror. And mirrors don't complete us. They confront us. So what really happens when you fall for someone who mirrors your shadow? Is it love? Or is it the unconscious knocking, asking to be seen? If you've ever loved someone too fast, too deep, too irrationally, this is not just your story. It's your psyche, speaking in symbols. And perhaps Carl Jung already knew exactly why. Let's step into the shadow. Let's find the answer beneath the obsession. They say love is blind, but Carl Jung would argue, love sees too much, not with the eyes, but with the unconscious. To understand why we fall so deeply for those who mirror us, we must begin not with the heart, but with the shadow. What is it, really? The shadow is not a monster, not your villain self, not some darkness waiting to devour the light. No, it's far more subtle, and far more dangerous because of it. The shadow, in Jung's words, is that hidden, repressed, for the most part inferior and guilt-laden personality. It's everything you've been taught not to be. The rage that wasn't acceptable in your household. The softness that was mocked on the playground. The craving for attention you learned to suppress to be good. The need for love you buried because no one ever came. And because these parts were too painful to hold, you disowned them. Not consciously, of course. You didn't say, I'll abandon this part of myself today. It happened slowly, silently, like stuffing letters into drawers you no longer open. But the psyche doesn't forget. It hides nothing. What you suppress becomes unconscious. And what is unconscious begins to project. You start to see your hidden self outside of you, in the movies that move you, in the people you obsess over, in the lovers you can't seem to let go. Projection, Jung said, is one of the commonest psychic phenomena, and perhaps the most haunting when it happens in love. Because the shadow doesn't just contain pain, it also contains your unlived joy, desire, wildness, sensuality, boldness. It's both the wound and the medicine. And when someone walks into your life carrying these disowned traits, you won't just be attracted to them. You will feel haunted by them. The way she speaks her truth without apology. The way he embraces solitude with strength. The way their chaos mirrors the disorder you locked away. You call it chemistry. You call it fate. But your psyche calls it recognition. Because in them, you see the parts of you that have long been abandoned, and that makes you feel whole for a while. But there's a cost. The more you project onto someone, the more you lose touch with who they really are. You don't see them. You see your shadow in disguise. And this is the root of obsession. Not love, but psychological reclamation. The unconscious says, here, this one. They hold what you lost, and so you cling. But what happens when the mirror walks away? When they ghost you, pull back, turn cold. You don't just mourn the relationship, you mourn the self you touched through them. And that's why letting go feels like death. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." So instead of turning inward, we chase the outer mirror. Over and over again. Different face. Same wound. But what if, instead of reaching for them, you turned toward the shadow? What if that burning attraction is not a curse, but a summoning, a quiet invitation to meet the parts of you you once believed were unlovable? Because when someone mirrors your shadow, they are not here to complete you, they are here to reveal you. And in that revelation, you have a choice. Keep chasing the reflection, or finally step into the source. But this isn't just theory. This isn't a metaphor. This plays out in bedrooms, in text messages left on read, in fights about nothing that leave you shaking, in lovers who come close and vanish. So next, let's walk into the lived reality of it. The emotional push and pull, the heartbreak that makes no sense, the yearning that never dies. Because when the shadow loves, it does not love softly. They always say, if they wanted to, they would. If they cared, they'd stay. But what if they did care? What if they stayed until the mirror became too clear? This is how it begins. You meet someone. There's a connection so sharp, it slices through your defenses. You share too much, too fast. They understand you, almost too well. You feel safe, alive, awake. And then, they pull away. No warning, no logic, just silence. You're left staring at your screen, rereading the last message, wondering if it was ever real. But deep down, you already know. This wasn't about logic. It was about the shadow. Carl Jung taught us that what is unconscious does not simply sit quietly beneath the surface. It leaks. It erupts. It acts through us, especially in love. So let's go deeper. Because this isn't just ghosting. It's not just mixed signals. It's an ancient dance between two wounded archetypes, each projecting, each longing, each terrified. Let me tell you a story. Her name was Alina. She had grown up in a home where love was earned, never freely given. She became the good girl, always pleasing, always kind, always available. But beneath her smile lived a deep, hungry ache. To be chosen, to be seen without performing. Then came Elias. Sharp, brilliant, unapologetically honest. He had a quiet rage in him that felt familiar. Alina felt drawn to him immediately, not because he was perfect, but because he was honest in a way she had never allowed herself to be. Their connection moved fast. Conversations till 3 a.m. Inside jokes. Shared pain. Felt like magic. But just as quickly, he began to withdraw. First slowly. Late replies. Less affection. Then suddenly, gone. No explanation. No goodbye. Alina was shattered. And yet, she still defended him. Said he was going through something. Blamed herself for being too much. But here's what she couldn't see yet. She had fallen in love with her own disowned rage, the boldness, the selfishness, the emotional freedom she had buried for years. And Elias, he wasn't cold. He had been abandoned as a child, and intimacy terrified him. So when someone got too close, he ran. Their love wasn't fake. It was fragmented. Two shadows dancing, each asking, "Will you love the part of me I cannot face?" But here's the tragedy of shadow love. You often mirror exactly what the other person can't hold. And so, Alina offered endless empathy. And Elias saw his own helpless mother. Elias offered fire and honesty. And Alina saw her absent father. Each loved not the person, but the reflection. And in that reflection lived all the unfinished stories of childhood. Carl Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But if neither is ready, both are burned." So what looks like hot and cold behavior is often two nervous systems protecting themselves from annihilation. One fears abandonment, the other fears engulfment. And so begins the push-pull, the chase, the withdrawal, the breadcrumbing, the apology, the silence, the return. Repeat. It's not a game, it's a coping mechanism. The shadow doesn't play fair. It doesn't care about timelines, dating rules, or logic. It only wants integration. But integration is terrifying when you've spent your life hiding. So you ask yourself, why do I always fall for people who are unavailable? Because deep down, you are unavailable to yourself. The part of you that craves closeness is fighting the part that believes it's dangerous. And so, you attract mirrors. Messy, inconsistent, magnetic. They show you what you're missing, and then disappear. Not because they're cruel, but because your shadow frightened theirs. This is not failure. It is initiation. Every abandonment that made no sense, every relationship that collapsed under its own weight, was a mirror, a moment, an invitation to stop seeking the missing piece in others and start facing the missing self. But before healing can begin, we must first understand what exactly is being mirrored. Is it love or projection? Is it chemistry or collision? There's a moment in every deep entanglement when you realize they're not really seeing you. Not the you who stays up late feeling everything. Not the you who held your breath in childhood to keep the peace. Not the you who reaches out and gets silence back. They're seeing something else. Something deeper, older, more ghost than human. They're seeing themselves. Or rather, the part of themselves they've never dared to face. This is the secret Jung whispered into the heart of depth psychology. We do not fall in love with people. We fall in love with our own projections upon them. So when someone stares into your eyes and says, "I feel like I've known you forever," what they often mean is, "You resemble the part of me I've lost." Let's go back to Elias and Alina. Their story didn't end in silence. Months after his disappearance, Elias reappeared. Not with an apology, but a confession. "I was scared," he said. "You made me feel things I didn't want to feel. You reminded me of someone, but I couldn't name who." He could name her now. His mother. Not the one who fed him dinner, but the one who looked through him, like he was never there. And Alina. She reminded him of his own vulnerability, of the boy he buried to become a man too soon. But here's the twist. Alina wasn't doing anything to Elias. She was simply existing. But her presence became a mirror. That reflected his shadow. The tenderness he disowned, the fear he suppressed, the longing he mocked. And in turn, Elias mirrored Alina's hidden parts. Her fury, her need, her silent cry to be chosen without needing to be nice. In each other, they didn't just see possibility. They saw their own ghosts. And that's the agony of shadow love. You think they're rejecting you, but they're rejecting the part of themselves you reflect too clearly. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But what about those who enchant us? What about those who leave us breathless? Not because they're right for us, but because they're familiar in a way that feels cosmic. Those aren't soulmates, they're soul mirrors. And mirrors don't love you, they reflect you. Faithfully, painfully, without mercy. Imagine walking through a hall of mirrors. Each person you meet distorts your shape just a little. But then comes one who reflects you clearly, too clearly, and it overwhelms you. You fall in love, not with them, but with the part of you that you see glowing through their presence. That is the most seductive illusion of all, because in that moment, you don't feel lonely. You feel returned to. But here's the truth. That glow doesn't come from them. Comes from you. They only reflect the light you forgot you carried. And this is why these relationships rarely last. Because eventually, the illusion cracks. You begin to see their flaws. They begin to resent the pedestal. And both of you wonder, what happened to the magic? The magic wasn't gone. It was never theirs to begin with. You projected it. They received it. And now you must reclaim it. But that's not easy, because projection feels like love. It feels like destiny. It feels like poetry written across lifetimes. And when that disappears, it feels like grief, not just for the person, but for the part of yourself you finally touched and lost. So what do? When the person who awakened your soul can no longer hold your heart, you remember, they were never meant to carry you. They were meant to reveal you. And that's not a loss. It's an awakening. Shadow love is not the love that stays. It's the love that initiates. It calls you inward, to meet the parts of you you've outsourced, to stop searching for a home in someone else's body, because what you're truly aching for is reunion with your own soul, and no one can give you that, but they can open the door. So if you've ever felt like someone cracked you open and then vanished, don't chase the mirror, step through it. There's a moment in every intense connection when you stop being you and become an idea, a symbol, an image, a dream that doesn't breathe. They don't love your fears, or your silence, or the way your hands tremble when you're trying not to cry. They love the way you make them feel, the light you bring, the mystery you carry, the stillness that soothes their chaos, or the fire that ignites their numbness. But it's not you they're in love with, it's the myth of you. Carl Jung warned of this in his exploration of archetypes, those ancient patterns of the human psyche. He spoke of the danger of becoming not a person, but an image projected upon. You become the anima or animus, not their partner, but the embodiment of their unlived life. And in that role, you will never be fully human again. Let me show you. There was a man named Theo. He was stable, calm, steady, but deep inside, he felt hollow. He had long buried his creative soul beneath discipline, duty, and control. Then came Mira, wild, unfiltered. She danced barefoot in the rain. She spoke like thunder. She kissed like fire. Theo was mesmerized, obsessed, not just with her body, but with what she awakened in him. She wasn't just a woman. She was a symbol of freedom. But as weeks turned to months, something changed. He began to control her, critique her, ask her to tone it down, make her more digestible, more stable, more like him. And Mira, she grew tired, not because she was afraid of love, but because she was tired of being worshipped, then slowly reshaped. Theo never saw her, only his projection. Carl Jung called this the danger of idealization. When a man falls in love with an image rather than the reality of a woman, he is not loving her at all, but rather his own unconscious. This is the trap of being a symbol. They need you to stay magical, untouchable, otherworldly. But what happens when you break the illusion? When you show your scars? When you cry at midnight and say, "I don't want to carry you anymore"? When you stop being the muse and become human? They panic, because once the symbol becomes flesh, they are forced to confront what they've been avoiding, themselves. And here lies the core tragedy. The very qualities that drew them in, your depth, your chaos, your softness, now become too much. You're no longer an escape. You're a mirror again, and they leave. Or worse, they stay, but punish you for not living up to the dream. This is not love. It's projection wrapped in romance. So ask yourself, have you ever been put on a pedestal, only to be knocked down for breathing? Have you ever been someone's fantasy, until you dared to have a need? Have you ever watched someone fall in love with the version of you that never really existed? That is the curse of becoming a symbol. And yet, there is a strange gift in it too, because to be turned into a symbol is to be seen deeply, but inaccurately. You touch something sacred in them. You awaken what they've forgotten. You become their spiritual doorway, even if they walk away. So do not curse your impact. Just don't confuse it with love, because being a symbol might attract devotion, but it cannot hold you. Only someone who sees the entirety of you can do that. Your grief, your boredom, your mess, your silence, not just your light, but your shadow. So the next time someone says, "I've never met anyone like you," pause and ask, are they falling for me, or for the part of them that I mirror? Because one leads to intimacy, the other to illusion. And now, silence, not the silence of absence, but the silence of realization, the kind that arrives after the storm, when there is nothing left to fix, or chase, or explain, just breath, and the echo of everything you tried to become for someone else. You sit in a room alone, but you are not lonely, because in that room sits every version of you that once begged to be loved, the child who tried too hard, the lover who stayed too long, the soul who mistook intensity for intimacy, and the shadow who loved loudly, but was never loved fully in return. You don't cry, not this time, because there's nothing to mourn, except the illusion that someone else would complete you. Carl Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And now you know, love is not light, it is revelation. You fell for the mirror because you needed to see what still lived in you, what still ached, what still reached for mother, what still searched for father, what still whispered, "Please, just hold me like I matter." But no one could. Not really. Because they were too busy projecting their own ghosts onto you. And in the end, you realize you were never in love with them. You were in love with the self you thought you could become through them. And maybe that was always the point. Not to stay, not to be saved, but to be shattered open, so something older could return. Not a person, not a lover, but a self you had long abandoned. So now you sit with your shadow, not as an enemy, but as an old friend. She doesn't ask to be fixed. He doesn't ask to be healed. They simply ask to be seen, held, integrated. You do not need another mirror. You need presence. You need the kind of love that sees you without projecting, touches you without fixing, and stays without needing you to be symbolic. But before anyone else can do that, you must look into your own eyes and say, "I see you, even here, especially here." Because until you do, every love will feel like déjà vu. Every heartbreak will feel like a lesson you keep failing. Every intense connection will feel like fate, until it ends. So let it end. Let the illusion collapse. Let the symbol dissolve. And in its place, may something quieter rise. Not desire, not obsession, but wholeness. the kind of wholeness that no lover can give, because it was never missing, only hidden. And now, you remember. If you're still here, then maybe something in you has been waiting to be called back home. Maybe you've loved someone through projection. Maybe you've been the mirror. Maybe you're ready to stop dancing in illusions and start standing in truth. But no rush. There's no final lesson here. Only space. The kind of space that opens when a story ends and the soul finally exhales. No conclusion. No advice. No next step. Just this. A hallway. A reflection. A breath. And a question. What part of you have you only ever met in someone else's eyes? If this found you in a moment of silence, stay there a little longer. And if something in you stirred, or remembered, or softened, maybe you'll need to hear what comes next. Subscribe if you're still here, but only if you're ready to stop looking outward and start coming home.